Hi, and welcome to Setting Up UV Mapping on Your Model. Today we're going to do a simple low poly character and we're going to set up UVs on it. So I'm going to use this as an example here. You're going to pretend that this bear is your 3D model and you're going to want to texture it, meaning make a painting for it. The first thing that I'm going to do is you're going to think about this bear almost as though you are unwrapping it like it's a rug. You're going to cut seams, remove the innards, and flatten the poor bear out into a rug. That's what the UVs are in the sense. So here's our porous laid bear, and we're going to figure out where to cut. So we're going to first cut along the inside of the leg here and up the foot. And there's no rule about where you're going to cut your seams. The best rule is you want to put them somewhere that they're seen the least. So oftentimes on the inside of legs, underneath the body if it's not seen that much by the camera, like right here, cutting along the belly. We're going to cut up on the neck, and then we're going to go underneath the arm. So once again, this is just about what you think will use your UV space the best and will also be the easiest to paint. Okay, so this next example here is in Substance Painter here, but it shows this perfectly. On the right, we've got our flattened UVs where you can see if you paint on them, that's what's going to happen on your model here. So they really work together. Now with things like Substance Painter, you can paint easily on the model in real time. So the question is, well then why would I need to have UVs set up? Can't I just do automatic mapping and it breaks it up funny, but I can just paint directly on my model? Why can't I just do that? And the answer is you can kind of, but it's still a good idea to have your UVs nicely laid out so that you have the option of painting in 2D as I'm doing right here, because there are just things, think about this from an art standpoint. A painter or a drawer is going to be used to drawing and painting in 2D, and there are just some things that it's a lot nicer to paint on in 2D. So always, in my opinion, always you really need to have your UVs set up on a nice sheet. So on the right, those are the UVs, and on the left, what you see here is the model that I'm painting on it. Okay, so this next example here is in Maya. I'm going to open up my model. I'm going to go to UV editor, and this opens up my editor. And if you've just modeled, you're going to have all your UVs, and they're going to look like this. They're going to be kind of clunky and not laid out at all, and they're in that square there. The UV toolkit also opens up when you open up your UV editor. So moving around in the model, that's your 0 to 1 spaces, they call it. I'm going to go to UV planar map, and I'm going to open up the option box. I'm going to reset it here just to show you can use default settings. Make sure to set this to camera. That's the easiest thing for learning it. That's going to set a planar map based off the camera angle. So we're going to position this, we're going to press apply, and you see this little square appear here. This is your UV map. And if I click this square down on the left and I click this little circle here, I can move this thing around in the viewport. In full disclosure, I never actually do this. I'm just showing you it's kind of good for understanding what it is, getting a visual for what's happening. I actually do all my UV editing in the editor still. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, I've got this thing right here, but I'm going to have to set this up now. So I'm going to right mouse button face, and I'm going to select that arm, and I'm going to do a planar map and just shoot it right through. Scale it down a little bit and move it off to the side. I'm going to do the same thing here for the leg. I'm going to grab the left leg. I'm going to do the same process, UV planar, and we've already got it set to camera, so no need to open the option box. And take this leg that you've unwrapped, go to UV shell, and scale it down here, move it off to the side. And I'm going to look at it here. We're going to try to select the foot here, just right mouse button, face. We'll try it again here. Okay, so if you're having trouble, just kind of have at it again. Maya can be stubborn sometimes. And I'm going to go to the wireframe in a few minutes by pressing 4. And what that does is the wireframe makes it so that you can see things more easily. So I'm going to do another planar map on that foot, move it off the texture space there, and I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom of the foot. Select it, UV, planar map, scale it down, and I'm moving it off to the side. So I'm grabbing piece by piece. And there's a lot of ways of doing this. This is just a way that I'm going to do this right now. I'm going to grab the whole head. I'm doing this in generally half, and I'm doing only half the body, which I'll explain in a few minutes. UV, planar map, Yep, take that head, scale it down, press W, move it off to the side, and now I'm going to grab the ear. I'm going to go back to my regular shaded mode in a minute just because it makes it easier to see, to check my work. Once again, kind of going between wireframe and shaded mode can help a little bit, so I can see, okay, I didn't select that. Hold down Shift and select those things again. And that's looking pretty good. UV, planar map, there's my ear. Scale it down and move it off to the side. Okay, now the next thing is I've got these things. I need to, there's a few more things. I'm just kind of checking what I need to do. And yeah, let's go in. There's a few more things as I look at it. Let's delete the side, one side of the model. And I'll explain what I'm doing with this in a few minutes. You don't have to do it this way. I'm going to do the hand in a few minutes. We're going to do the same process on the hand. And looking right here, you can see that I've missed a little piece. That's kind of a funny place for it. I could either just cut that off and sew it into the leg that I already mapped, but in this case, because I haven't gone very far, I'm just going to remap the whole leg again. So just select the leg that you want again, like this. However you want to select it is fine. There it is. And I'm going to shoot that planar map through it again. I'm going to go up to UV, planar, and there we go. Okay, so that little problem is fixed. Once again, you don't have to cut your model in half. That's actually, we're going to talk about mirroring UVs. You don't have to do that. I'm going to do the hand here, but I'll explain that while I'm doing the hand process again. So you don't have to cut your model in half. I'm doing that because it will save texture space. It's a pretty standard way of modeling a character, but once again, not 100% necessary. If you just learn how to set up the UVs here, setting up a model in half is optional. So I'm going to right mouse button, select edge here, and then I'm going to go to my UV toolkit. I'm going to go to cut and sew, and I'm going to press cut. And that cuts a seam. I'm deciding where I want the seams in my quote bear to be cut. We're making our little bear skin rug here. Right mouse button, edge, select down, and press cut again. We're in our UV toolkit. Under cut and sew, you're pressing cut. I did that for the foot. And I'm looking, and I'm going to do the same thing for the torso. Now the reason why I'm going through this so quickly is because I've set up a lot of character UVs in my day now, and it's a pretty similar process no matter what the character is. So I kind of know how I'm going to unwrap a torso. Cut. All right. And we're going to go back to object mode. Turn it around a little bit, looking at, I'm going to say, okay, maybe it's time for the hand. So we're just holding shift and we're going through and selecting all those edges. So right mouse button, edge, and then just hold shift and select them. And then we're going to do the same process when we're done here. We're going to cut. Okay, so now we have our seam cut. And that's wherever you want to cut your seams. Think about it, you're unwrapping your bear rug. Go back to your UV editor, choose UV, and select all the UVs. Then we're going to go back to the UV toolkit, and we're going to go to Unfold, and in here press the Unfold button, and boom, it unfolds everything. And you can see now it just sort of inflated everything. It took those seams and it unfolds them. I'm going to check the hand here. Whatever I select in the viewport will show up in the UV editor and vice versa. That's the torso and head. Okay, so I'm going to, we're going to grab this head here, grab the UVs, or the shell, either way is fine. And we're going to turn on the texture, the checker here, and we're going to scale everything up here, and that'll make the checkers large enough so that we can see. You can do it different ways, but that's an easy way of doing it. So we're going to just kind of look at this. We want this texture resolution to be even. So I'm going to grab that head and size it up so that those checkers look about the same. Otherwise, the texture, parts of it will be very sharp and parts of it will be very blurry. I'm going to select here, go face, and select where I see where the eyes should be. Okay, I'm looking at my UV editor. There's where the nose is. Okay, I can see where that corresponds. So I'm going to turn that in a way that I know I could paint it. You don't want it to be upside down or anything like that, ideally. I'm going to take, just kind of checking everything out. Face, okay, that is the that's the torso here, so let's size that up and get that closer to the rest of it. Now that looks really messed up. If I turn this around, you can see very clearly that one side of it has a lot of texture resolution, and look at the difference in the size of the checkers on that. So one of these needs to be fixed. You'll see it in a second. So there you can really see it very clearly. So that back, let's fix it. Let's go right mouse button and select the UVs. I'm going to turn it up and just kind of move it into place here like so. And with that selected here, maybe I'll select a few more. We're going to move the shell, just kind of move it over. Let's grab those UVs here again, and let's unfold them. And that's going to kind of relax it. So look, so that relaxes it. Let's turn it in again here. So select that, turn it in like so, move it in, and let's relax down on the bottom by the same process. So we're going to right mouse button, select UVs. You can kind of pull them in a little bit. A little bit of stretching isn't going to matter that much. We're going to relax it again by pressing unfold. Great. And I'm going to actually mirror this torso. So you'll see in a few minutes why I'm doing this, but we're going to scale it down a little bit, get it back closer to size with the rest of them. And we're just kind of checking everything here. Okay. So the next thing is I'm going to grab that arm and I'm going to turn it, and I'm paying attention to where everything is on the model. When I look at that, I can see in the resolution that's facing down. That's exactly how I want it. And looks okay. That came out fine. I'm going to grab the foot here, and I'm going to want to size this thing down quite a bit. So we're going to scale that down, grab the UV shell here, which grabs the whole thing, and we're moving it into place here. And I'm looking at those textures here. We're going to grab that leg here. That looks okay. So we're going to move that next to the arm here. And think of this as almost as though you're putting together a puzzle. That foot, we're going to scale that down appropriately. Great. Under the foot, which in all honesty you may never even need. Like, unless the character, you see the bottom of the foot, it doesn't really need to even be mapped hardly at all. Maybe if it dies for a second you might see it. We're going to scale that down, move it in, and this, what is this? Okay, this is our problem here. I think, let's see what that is. Let's see where it sits. Oh, that's the ear, right? When you select it, you show you what it is. I forgot to cut a seam on that. So you can see what happens. It looks all messed up. So I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to cut, like, look at how messed up that is with the texture on it. So I'm going to go right mouse button, select my edge, going up, like so. And then we're going to cut that. Go a little bit over there, and we're going to go to the cut and sew and press cut again. Then we're going to select the UVs, right mouse button UV, and press unfold, and there it is right there. And there's different ways of doing this. I've got a method where I bring these things into ZBrush and use ZBrush to unfold my UVs. It does it perfectly. But in Maya, this is a good way of doing it here. So once again, think about this as though you are putting together a puzzle. I'm going to put this thing down here, and I want it in one of these squares. So the one in the corner right there, in the corner, like right, that's the one. That's really the main one here. So let's put it in that 0 to 1 space. Size things up just a little bit so that we're going to fit it in a little better. And then from here, think of this again just like you're doing a puzzle. So I'm going to grab this right here, and because we're mirroring that, I'm going to mess with that thing a little bit in a few minutes. So I'm going to hold right mouse button, UV, and I'm going to start straightening the middle here. So I'm going to select all the UVs going down this line right here. Hold down Shift and just make sure that you select these. And it's going to stretch a tiny, tiny bit. If I do it right, it'll barely stretch, but it'll be worth it. For the what it'll do for us, it'll be worth it. So I'm going to press R and scale in on the X-axis and press W and move it in just a little bit. This is going to be stretching a tiny bit right here. You could just manually move them in a little bit. You could use that unfold thing and kind of relax it a little bit. Just whatever works. If it stretches a tiny bit, it's really okay. It doesn't have to, all UVs are going to be stretching a little bit. Think about this. When a model is running, the UVs are going to be stretching left and right as it's moving anyway. So you don't want it to stretch a lot, but tiny little stretching, not really a problem. Okay, so we're going to flip this over so it corresponds correctly. And I'm going to select these again, press R, and scale in one more time. I had to flip that. Now I'm going to grab everything else, UV shell, right mouse button, UV shell, and I'm going to start moving these into place. Now the head, I would probably want to give it the same treatment. You'd want it to be sort of flat along the center. It doesn't have to be, but I'm not mirroring it the way I'm with the torso, but I'm doing it just a little bit. And then maybe I'll pull this thing in a little bit to avoid some stretching. that if you were actually mirroring it, that would probably be a more standard way to go. Okay, so I've got the head and I've got the torso. Now I'm going to go UV shell. We'll grab the ears. Doesn't really matter what I grab next. And I'm just going to, once again, we're just putting them in this puzzle. You want to do your best to sort of fill up all the texture space. I'm going to move in the arm, move the foot. And a little tip here, it's actually okay to leave a little bit of extra space in your map because oftentimes you'll be asked to add things to your character. And if you have a little extra space, it gives you a little wiggle room sometimes. Okay, so we're moving that foot in. Let's grab the hand, move it in. You don't want to move these things too close to each other because the texture, if it's resized, it might blur into the other parts. So kind of keep them spaced a little bit. They call it the gutter. Just keep a little bit of a gutter in there. Okay, so now I'm going to select my model. I'm going to press D or insert and I can move my pivot. Then I'm going to press V or I'm going to go up to the top, which you'll see me do in a minute here. And it's snap. So I go up here, select snap to point, and I'm going to snap my pivot to the center of the model. Turn off snap again, and we're going to go up to edit, duplicate special, open the option box. And right here, that's X, Y, and Z. And I've got X set to -1, so it's going to mirror in X. So I press duplicate special, and it mirrors the model in X. So I select both meshes. I'm going to go up to Mesh, Combine, and now they're combined. Now what happened is Maya doesn't know what material, that's when it turns green. It says, what's that material? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Hypershade, either Windows, General Editors Hypershade I think it is, or you can just, in this case, I go up to the little hotkey. You'll see in a minute. So I press that little blue thing, go to my Hypershade, with my model selected, go right mouse button, assign shading group, and then that problem is fixed. We're going to go back to our UV editor here, and I'm going to right mouse button UV shell, and I'm going to select this. And if I move these things around, look at this. Now there's 2 on top of 1, because when I duplicated that, it also duplicated the UVs. Now with the torso, I actually want that. I'm going to move that over, and I'm going to go to my UV toolkit, and I'm going to go to align, I'm going to go to transform here, and we're going to hit flip in U. So it flips it. So now I've got that mirrored. I'm going to move it in close, and we're not going to be able to seam it yet. So I need to weld my vertices. So I'm going to go to my object mode, and here I'm going to go to mesh, and edit mesh, I'm sorry, and go to merge, open up the option box and set this to 0.001 and press merge, and that'll merge anything that's close. All those vertices are merged together now. So right mouse button, edge, and select your edge. This is all in your UV editor here. Hold down shift and go through and select your edges holding shift so you can select them all. So we're going through one by one. And then in your UV toolkit here, we're going to go to sew again, and we're going to sew those edges. Okay, now it's all sewed. Now it's all sewed together. So at this point, you've got your model. There are your UVs. They're all set up in the 0 to 1 space, and hopefully this gives you a nice little overview of how to set up a basic UV map.